really on my heart. And I know this was said, this will be about destiny. And I guess those of you who know me kind of know how I'm wired. And it is very much for souls. And that when I became a Christian with Keith, we didn't know anything. You know, I had never read the Bible. I'm Jewish, and Keith was Jewish, and we just knew we had found something that really made a difference in our life. And so we gave our heart to the Lord, and I'm seeing Betty really big. Betty, you're very big. Good to see you. And so we didn't really trust people that much, and we were still figuring things out when we gave our heart to Jesus. But one thing that Keith was very big on was the red letters. He figured, you know, I'm just going to trust what Jesus said. I'm going to trust the red letters until I know something better, something different. And I feel like I am talking to some seasoned people that have been in ministry for a while and are in ministry. And so I want to encourage you, because this is, you know, this is a different season. This is a time right now with COVID and everything that's going on. You know, it's not your normal just go out into the street, meet people, you know. It's like, no, I'm home. You know, I want to go to the street. I don't, you know, I'm putting my mask on, and it's that way in California anyway. So, you know, it's a different season, but I'm going to act like it's not, because I can't qualify everything. You know, we're going to be out and about again at some point. And I wanted to really share some stories with you. I very often speak to a lot of young people who have not seen, like when I when I found Jesus, it was kind of the tail end of the Jesus movement. And we were all young, and the church was young, and it was all very exciting, and everyone was out talking to people. We were always witnessing. We were always, I mean, not like, let's get a gang together and go on the corner. It was just like, oh, here's our waitress. Let's find out what's happening with her. You know, how you doing today? And she'd say something, and then we'd answer back, or wherever we were. It was just an opportunity to talk to somebody about Jesus. And if you came to the Lord in that season, then you saw that all around you. You saw people reaching out. You know, a lot of young people, I'll say their 20s, you know, 20 somethings, maybe early 30 somethings, they haven't seen so much of that. I've been the last 20, 25 years going to a lot of churches and speaking, and I would always talk about evangelism. I would always talk about, here's how to talk to people. Here's what you can do, you know, because it's a daunting word. It's like, well, I'm not Billy Graham, and I don't have an hour to share the gospel, and and I can't do this, and everyone qualifies. And it's like, that's okay, because, you know, he had the call of an evangelist, you know, somebody who stood before the masses and preached. But we're all told to share the gospel, you know, to be witnesses and to share the gospel. And for me, that was always just kind of wherever I was, whoever happened to cross my path. And I have to fix this because I'm not seeing people. Let's see. Should I hit share screen? What happens when I say share screen?
We'll see your screen.
Oh, disabled. Oh, wait. Host disabled. Okay. Okay, wait. Hi there. What's happening is I'm seeing various people really huge. And then what I'm going to do is make my screen smaller, exit full screen, and then can you hear me still?
We can still hear you and see you well. Yes.
I'm sorry. So
no problem.
go and I'd give all these examples of this is easy. It's easy to talk to people. And, you know, and I'd be excited because I just had encounters and I'm not saying I led people to the Lord every time I had an encounter. Far be it. I don't know. You know, I can point to a couple of times, say in the last 20 years, that I know that. But everybody's in a different season. And everyone, if they don't already know God and have a relationship with Him, they're in some kind of a process of trying to find meaning, because everybody wants to find meaning. Everybody wants to find a purpose. Everybody wants to find the kind of love that's hoping.
No, then that means they can hear.
Yeah, that, you know, they're hoping they can get that from a person, that unconditional love. And as we find, whether we're married and have a great marriage or not married, you know, we marry although we are great, we marry an imperfect person and we have an imperfect mate. And so there's imperfection, you know, we're all flawed. And what's interesting is I've spent about, believe it or not, 120 hours to 150 hours in a class with a screenwriter. And this guy doesn't know the Lord. I mean, he's a Hollywood guy. It's very expensive. You do 12 hours a day, you're just brain dead after 3 days. But I mean, every other word, he can fit a cuss word, 3 of them in one sentence. You know, he doesn't like God, he doesn't like Christians, he doesn't like Republicans, he doesn't like anything like that. And so, but in his summary, always on the last day, he'll say, everybody is looking for the same thing. They're looking for unconditional love. And I just can't believe those words come out of his mouth, because he's talking about, in creating a film, that people all have the same need. They want this love that's going to fill their life. And so, you know, even there, in the most secular of settings, I was flabbergasted. And as I'm going to say, more mature Christians in the Lord, most of us on this call are, we need to be not only doing this stuff, but we are also setting an example. And by the way, I didn't say this before. I kind of jumped in and got all disoriented with my Zoom, which I still am. But Marisha, I met her, our friend, a lot of you know Randy Stonehill. And so somehow they met while Randy was on the road somewhere. And he kept saying, you need to meet this girl, Marisha. She lives in Texas and I'm in Los Angeles. And I don't know, she is so sweet, because I probably texted and changed times with her for about a year. We went back and forth. So, but we did meet several months later. She came out from Austin. She has the patience of a saint, really. And we just had a great time. And then she asked me to do this. And so, and I met Walter. Walter, I'm going to say his last name wrong. Walter Heinrich. How do you say it? Heinrich.
Yes.
Yeah. He might have come to Texas, or I might have met him in Germany. I'm not sure which. I haven't figured that out yet. But anyway, right now people are hurting so bad. And, you know, they're sick or afraid of getting sick. You know, they're out doing something crazy or afraid that craziness is going to come to their house. They're just really have a heart, you know, to be on the streets and protest peacefully, which I'm fine with. But, you know, this is like a different season right now. But people need meaning. And I've been praying through this time that while people are quarantined, I've been home since the end of February. And I've only seen a couple people. I'm staying at my daughter's now because they're on vacation. So I'm staying there with Rebecca, and because they're gone, but I'll only see them. I've only seen them 4 or 5 times, and it's been outside. So I hope Kelly is still on, because I want to. Are you still on, Kelly? I don't know if she can hear me, but I wanted to tell some stories.
Yes, I'm here.
This is one of the, I had written down some stories that I wanted to share, and this was one of them. And I was with Kelly Willard. We were in downtown Kansas City, and just the casualness of how you can speak to somebody without it being an organized outreach, or it's just like you're in a parking lot, you're at a restaurant, you're walking down the street, and we have to have our eyes open. You know, we have to be looking around us. I always say, walk with your eyes open. You know, I lived near a ministry for a while, and everyone was so, it wasn't Last Days, it was another one. I was like in the neighborhood of one. And they were so busy all the time, all the time. They always had a meeting, a prayer meeting, a this, a that, a this, a that, that they never looked up, because they knew somebody, the leaders never looked up to see who they were passing by, because they had, you know, they had another thing to go to. And I wasn't a leader. I was just a neighbor who hung out there a lot. And so I ended up talking to tons of young people, and they'd always say, you're just the friendliest person I've met here. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people there. And it's like, you're the first person who's talked to me. And I, you know, if I had an hour, I'd spend an hour. But I want to talk about this one instance that I was with Kelly, and we were actually ministering together around the Kansas City area. And we were going to see these guys we knew. One was a pastor, and they got together on like a Friday night to play jazz at this restaurant club. So Kelly and I went to eat, and then we were just walking across like the plaza downtown Kansas City. It's a really nice built up area. So we're just walking to go hear our friends play jazz. And Kelly says, did you see that girl across the street leaning on the pole? And I'm like, no, I mean, it was night. I'm like, no. She goes, no, she looks like she's upset. Maybe she's crying. So we're kind of walking and looking, and she's like, well, should we go over there? So I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we walked over, and it was a young girl. I mean, you know, in her 20s probably. And she looked upset. She's kind of honestly pat her head on a lamppost. So we just started talking to her. Hey, are you okay? You know, what's happening? What's going on? And, you know, is there anything we can do for you? Just asking, like, we're friendly passerby questions. And she opens up and says, oh, we're like, well, what's going on? Oh, it was like her family and her fiance, they were all in this nice restaurant, and she was outside upset. And it was something to do with the families or whatever. That wasn't important. But so we started saying, well, you could do this, or you could do that. You could go back in, and, you know, we're just sort of in her situation, trying to help her get back in the restaurant and have an idea how to reconnect. And so we talked 5 or 10 minutes, and then it was, well, do you want to pray? We can pray for you. You know, we're Christians. And she's like, sure. So she immediately, I mean, this has never happened with a person on the street. We just put out our hands. She like did the circle thing with it. There was 3 of us, held our hands. And I think Kelly and I are thinking, oh, she's like, you know, it's kind of like the Christian thing that you do. You grab hands and pray. So we started praying and prayed for her situation. And she prayed, and she just felt like, I know God's been calling me back. You know, I know that He wants me to come back to Him. I've been not going to church. I've been not doing this and that. And so we encouraged her and prayed with her about that. But that was just because Kelly happened to see her, and we decided we would cross the street and walk over and see if this girl was okay. And we ended up being able to really minister to her. And hopefully, you know, hopefully she came back to the Lord, or from a stray, whatever her thing was. Yeah, we don't know. But often we don't know. We're just planting a seed. You know, we're meeting somebody at a moment in their life. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know what they've been asking God. We don't know anything, except we feel a prompting to like, oh, but in order to, yes, I see that thumb. But in order to feel that prompting, we need to walk with our eyes open. We need to be looking around and seeing what's around us. for a lot of reasons. We want to be safe. We don't want a car to hit us when we walk off the curb. A lot of reasons, but also see who's around you and look at them. And there might be something you can say or do that's going to make a difference in their life right there. And it might not be the full-blown gospel. I was in Trader Joe's with a friend of mine in Las Vegas. She had, how Trader Joe's is in the States anyway, where you check out, it's all open, it's all open. And I was standing behind her. She's got a bunch of kids. Her cart was full. And there's a guy in front of her. Well, there's a guy checking out, and the next guy about to check out is wearing fatigues, camouflage, like he's in the military. And, I'm just kind of minding my own business. And God says, I want you to talk to him. And I'm like, oh, come on, please. He's right in front of the checker. He's going to go. I got to. So I was like, all right, I don't know what I'm going to say or do. I have no idea. But I walked around my friend's cart and got in front of her, and she kind of looked at me like, what's up, And I said to this guy, I said, you're in the military. And he's like, yeah. So I'm like, what branch? So he tells me. And this was several years ago. I asked if he'd been deployed, if he was going to be deployed. And he said he didn't know. He thought he might be. And it was either Iraq or Afghanistan. It was one of those places. And I said, oh, and I'm being friendly, I'm just like chatty Mel. And I kind of looked at him. I said, look, I'm thinking me like your grandma. I'm just curious, And I asked if he was married, and he is. And then, do you have any kids? And his wife is expecting their first baby. And it's almost now his time to check out. And so I just like, do you mind if I pray for you? All he had to do is say yes or no. And he's like, sure. So I felt that. I said, would you mind if I put my hand on your shoulder? He's like, no, go ahead. So I did, and I felt like I'm just here in front of the checker, and who else? I don't care, So I just prayed back what he had told me, that if he's deployed, that he would be kept safe, that his wife would have a healthy baby, that he'd be protected. Even better, don't get deployed. It was just very quick. And I just said, in Jesus' name. That's the only thing I said about the Lord at all. He, checked out his bottle of orange juice or whatever and left. And so, you might think, well, that wasn't very fruitful. And it's like, I don't know if it was fruitful or not. I'll never know. He might go home and say, wow, this nice lady prayed for me at Trader Joe's. Or maybe he was asking God something, and somehow just me approaching him and praying for it, there was an answer. And I just want to encourage all of you to, I know about you already in this spot, but for anybody who's not, like, be encouraged to just really look around you and stop and talk to people. I've stopped just like seeing somebody sitting on a curb and going, hey, are you okay? Great conversation. Are you okay? Or, hey, hi, smile at them, look them in the eyes and smile at them. I'm amazed because people are so hungry for a human connection. And I think especially even now, because we have so much technology, I can see you, but I can't hug any of you. I can't, there's nothing. It's like, hi. One incident was I was in East Texas, which is where our ministry was, but I had flown in to speak at Calvary Commission. Some of you will know that. They have a prison ministry and do missions. And so when the meetings were done, myself and 3 others, we decided we'd go out and eat. So we jammed in this little car. And of course, at 11 at night, everything in East Texas is shut, Cracker Barrel. Oh man, it just closed, everything we couldn't. And it was it's a little the middle of nowhere anyway. So, it wasn't like you could find many places, but we found this one. It was sitting on the corner of a big Highway 20. And it sold, the place had sold hot dogs and whatever. And you couldn't go inside, but you could go, it was like I-20 and heading into, in Lindale and I-20 there, where they had the free roses. For those, if there's some people in here know that, where that is. And they had this, it was like a concrete picnic table, that you could get your hot dogs and then walk all the way over and sit at this concrete picnic table. And it was just one street light, the freeway's going this way. And so we're sitting there and eating, all four of us, ministers. And it was very dark. And all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, this woman sort of, it was like a movie. She comes bursting out of, the darkness. And she goes, have you guys seen a guy here? He's a trucker. He's got a truck, like it's got big flames, whatever. She's describing this truck and this trucker as he come by, and we haven't seen anybody. She looks disappointed. So, are you sure? Yeah, we've been here about 20 minutes. We haven't seen anyone. And so she turns and starts to walk away. And it's like the whole darkness is enveloping her. And we all look at each other like, wait a minute, we're like ministers. And so one of us said, hey, are you okay? So she turned around and kind of walked back and looked at us, and we asked her name, on, and a little bit of her story. And we said, well, we're Christians, and we just came from this place. And we started talking to her, and she just burst out in tears, literally. I mean, she's sobbing. We're like, oh, what did we do? And she said, I've been praying all day that if God was real, he would send somebody to me tonight before the end of the night. And we're just, what if we would have just let her sort of walk away? So her, she's like cheating on her husband. She's trying to meet this guy. There was a truck stop on the other side of the freeway. She's trying to meet this guy, and her husband pulls up in a truck with her son and says, I want you to come home. She's like, no, I don't want to go. So he leaves, and we talked to her longer. We really ministered to her and prayed for her. And we said, well, we'll take you home. And she said, would you mind driving through the truck stop first? Because she was looking for her boyfriend. And so we were like, I mean, we're jammed in this car because it was tight for four of us. So we were like, okay. And we drove her through the truck stop. He wasn't there. And so we drove her home. And I remember thinking, because we got off of the highway and we started going down this dirt road, East Texas dirt road. It was really windy, and it was dark. There were no lights. And I remember thinking, this is a setup. We're going to get mugged. We're going to get beat up. And, but we got to the bottom. It was a trailer park. I let her out. We had given to her, there was nothing we could do, but we gave her the number of Calvary Commission, where we had just ministered. And we gave her some names and some phone numbers so she could follow up. And because she seemed like she wanted to go to church, and we drove off. I mean, that was that. But who knows what happened with that? I don't know. And that was a real, I mean, I've never, ever encountered anything like that. If God, I asked God that by tonight, if he's real, he'll send somebody to tell me he's real tonight. And they're not all that elaborate. Another time, I flew into an airport. I was going to speak. The pastor picked me up. And as I walked out, I saw from the back, it was a nun, but I knew she wasn't American because her habit was bright white. It was all white. And we walked around her. He had his car sitting right there. So I got in and I looked over at her, and she was very dark. I assumed African. And I just felt God saying, you go talk to her. You have to talk to her. So I told the pastor, just a minute, I have to go. I just need to go. So I walked up to her and I said, hi, and where are you from? And she told me she was from Africa. And I said, well, what are you doing here? And she'd come from for a conference in the city that we were in. And I said, well, how long have you been waiting? And she, oh, they're picking me up, you know. And I said, well, how long? She'd been waiting about an hour. And I thought, that's a little long. So I asked her, she hadn't changed any money because in America, we don't care. You know, come with all your foreign money. There's no place to change it. It's not like traveling in any other countries. There's all signs in different languages and money changers and all that. Not in American airports. I'm sorry to say. So of course she hadn't changed any money, but she opened up, she had a little purse and she had a piece of paper and she had a phone number on it. She said, these are the people. And I said, oh, well, maybe should I call them for you? Of course, she didn't have a cell phone. And so I called them and I said something like, you know, Sister Mary Teresa, I'm calling, she's here at the airport. And they're like, what? We didn't think she was coming till tomorrow. You know, this is like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I told them the gate and everything. And so that tell her we'll be there in a half hour. So I got in the car, I said, they're coming, just stay here. But I thought to myself, here's this woman who's come all the way, who knows how long she'd been traveling. She's standing on a curb. She's going to be here. They weren't coming for 24 hours, you know, and she had no money. She had no phone. What was she going to do? So I felt like sometimes you kind of get to be like an angel, you know, you help somebody. It's like, you know, they already love God, but you're an angel, you know, you just provided something for them. So when I got to my hotel room, I thought, because the number I called was on my phone. I called that number to see if she got there, and she was just walking in. And she got on the phone. Oh, you are my angel. She was calling me that. You're my angel. God sent you. And, you know, it's just so rewarding. But it's like following that prompting, you know, seeing someone and then you get that tug in your spirit. Clearly, you can't stop for everybody, right? Oh, maybe you can. Jesus didn't. You know, Jesus did not stop for everybody. But he said he completed everything God sent him here to do. So and people, you know, came to him, but a lot of it was just sort of on the way stuff. A lot of Jesus's ministry was he was on the way here and then somebody ran up, and he was heading over here and then somebody came, tugged on his robe. And so much of our ministry, we think of it's in a building, it's in a church, we have to be with a team. We have to, you know, we have all these conditions, and it's as we go. I mean, not that those other things aren't important and valid, but it's as we go. And, you know, I just stopped in parking lots and talked to people and given them money or given them some food, and just in some way so that they can have a touch, you know, And, you know, it's not very often there's an opportunity to really talk to someone. But, you know, I encourage you guys to keep something with you, or have something that you can send someone. I was in America, we have Costco's, you know, the big, huge stores. And I was checking out and there was a lady in front of me. Now, when I go to Costco, it's a disaster because my cart is full. But this lady in front of me, I noticed her because she only had one plant, and it was up in that little spot where you sit your children, you know, in that little seat. And so I just said, oh, that's a pretty flower. And she turned around and looked at me because I was behind her, and she said, yes, my husband just died. And I went, oh, well, I'm a widow too. And so we talked for a minute, and then I, you know, as we were waiting to check out, and I, you know, I was purposely talking a little loud. And so the person in front of her and the checker heard. And I told her, well, I have this book, which was my book, but it could have been anything. And would you like me to, if you feel comfortable giving me an address, it doesn't have to be your home address. It could be your business. It could be a P.O. box. I'm not going to stalk you, but I can send you this book. And so she said, oh, yes, please, Then it was her turn to check out. And then the checker goes, I want one too. And I said, okay, give me your address. And I don't know what happens with those things, but, I happen to have written a book, but if you haven't written a book, it could be anything. It could be, oh, I'm listening to this music I really love. Is that it, Marisha? Yeah, all right. I've just been reading this. I think this would really encourage you. Have something you can either send or have in the pocket. And Spence, I know your testimony. You have an amazing testimony. We all have something. We all have something that we can share and make contact with somebody. And I'm just trying to think, there was another story. Oh, two things. I have a friend, her name is Jamie, and she lives out here in Los Angeles. And a few years ago, when we could go out to places, and I was shopping, not online, we just went to the mall to get like coffee and visit. And we ended up in a store, kind of looking through clothes. We didn't really need anything. And the sales lady comes up, wants to know if she can help us. And we're chatting with her a minute. And she looks kind of down. You can tell when you look at somebody that maybe they're not doing well. And we're just, oh, are you okay? And she wasn't. And well, I'm struggling. She ends up, because we're both really, want to know what's going on. So she tells us she's got a kid on drugs and she doesn't know what to do, and etc. So we had experience with that. And so we were able to talk to her and encourage her and pray for her. I got her address, things like that. It's just being available to God, because he says, he who's wise wins souls, and that we are supposed to be his witnesses. We are supposed to be sharing. It is part of our Christian, responsibility. We have God. Marisha, I'm not checking time, so you just wave at me when it's like, okay, you're almost done. Okay, so I just saw this online the other day, but there's this group that does magic, these two men, Penn and Teller, and they're well known in America. And so Penn, the man, well, they're both men, was talking about, now he's an atheist and sort of like an evangelical atheist. He's like really big into atheism, does not believe in God at all. And as far as I know, still doesn't. But he talked about one of his shows, and they like play in Las Vegas and big venues, that kind of thing. So, and always go into the audience and talk to people afterwards. And he was talking about, as he was going down and shaking hands and, they're doing their thing after the show, that there was this guy there. He said he was kind of just in the corner, sort of waiting. And then he walked up very nicely to him and said, I was here last night. And he said some complimentary things to him that he felt that they were genuine, and he's recounting it, and he's just saying he complimented me on, and he was somebody that had got up, because they pull people out of the audience, I guess, come up and be part of this act here. So he had done that the night before, and he'd come back, and so he was talking to him, and then he said a few nice things, and he said, so I wanted you to have this. I brought this back for you, and I signed the front. And it was a very small little book. It was probably a book of Psalm, the way he didn't quite know his Bible stuff. It's like, I don't know if it was Old Testament. I think it was Psalms. Is that in the New Testament? He was doing that. But he said, this man was so sincere. And his compliments are genuine. He wasn't like, trying to make me feel good. He said, he looked at me in the eye, and he just was very kind and genuine. And he handed it to me, and he said, thank you, and he took it, and then he opened it up and, later, and said it had his name and about 5 phone numbers and an email and all that. And, he said, I don't believe. He said, but I tell you what, that guy was nice. That guy was a nice guy. He was not like, what's the right word? Schmoozing me, oh, you were so cool. He said what he said was very genuine, and he was really a nice man. And he was a big man like me. And he said, he used the word proselytize, Penn did. But he said, if I really believed there was a heaven and a hell, and I felt like, this is more important than anything that you could possibly know, why wouldn't people be talking about it? He actually said, how much do you have to hate somebody to not tell them? At least give them a chance to understand. And he was very impressed with this man. He, he's still like, don't believe in God at all, but I liked this guy. And so I know right now we can't be inviting people in, have people in our homes and maybe do what we would normally do. But people, they're looking for a human touch. They're looking for somebody that's going to talk to them. Look them in the eye. I've gone up to the scariest kids. I mean, that looked like, don't talk to me, I'm going to get on my bike and hit you. But I was in a safe place. I knew it was safe, and I felt like, this would be a safe kid to talk to. Just say hi. Like, hey, how's it going? And, oh, those are cool tattoos. What's that one? Oh, did that hurt? I'm just talking to him like that. And he was just like this big puppy. He just looked all hard and like, don't mess with me. But he wasn't, inside he was just a kid, 20 something, 18, I don't know. Now I wasn't going to invite him home with me, but I did talk to him a little bit, and share. And there's always opportunity, and there's always people, I've started the lamest conversations with people, just waiting in line, and I'll look and I'll go, be some lady, and I go, oh, cool shoes, like, where'd you get those? And she might say something or not. We might start a conversation or not, but it's kind of not up to me. I can just sort of make that. It might lead somebody somewhere, it might not. And when I first moved back to I lived away from Los Angeles for a very long time. And when I first moved back, my grandson said, Grandma, you've moved back to California 5 times. And I was like, no, I haven't. Then I counted. I said, well, it's been 4, but I think I'm here to stay now. But the first time I moved back, I lived in Hollywood. Right now I'm in North Hollywood, but I lived right in Hollywood, literally Hollywood and Vine, just back from Hollywood and Vine, a half a block behind. And it was in a loft. It was like an industrial building, and it was all one room, with everything in this one room. And I didn't really go hang out on Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, I did that with Keith. I did that growing up. I'm from here, but there's a lot of homeless in that area, a lot of homeless, a lot of people digging in dumpsters, a lot of, you just walk around the corner. You could be someplace really, really nice, and, you walk around the corner and, there's somebody that's homeless and hungry. And so I started carrying on purpose. I would buy, brown paper bags, and I'd put non-perishables in it. Like I'd put maybe a protein, like you know, a can of tuna or a can of lentil soup or something that you could pull the lid back. You know, you didn't need a can opener, but it had a little pulley thing. And I put a spoon and some napkins, and I'd put maybe an apple and maybe a bottle of water. And I'd have 5 or 6 of those in my car. And in the winter, I'd have blankets. I'd go to the Goodwill and just buy a sleeping bag, a blanket. They weren't very expensive, but I would just have them in the back of my car, you know, or on the side in case somebody was by the freeway. And, you know, I would just give them to people as I felt led. And sometimes real literally, I mean, I thought, I'm going to get in trouble here. The police are going to stop me because I'd be like, I would say, that guy over there. And I'd be like, I can't park there. You know? But I'd double park for a second and jump out with a little bag and just say, you know, hey, Jesus put me on your heart, put you on my heart. I want you to have this. I want you to know he loves you, cares about you, sees you. You run back to my car. That's all. You know, maybe I could have a note in there, you know. I mean, it wasn't all that organized. It took all I could to get like 5 or 6 bags together. But there's always ways that you can connect with people. And I know that's what God wants us to do. That is really what the world needs, always has. And it hasn't changed. And even though, you know, times right now are, you know, they're hard, they're difficult to be out and about for many different reasons, but it won't always be like that. And if it is, then God will give us other ways. But the human connection is so important. And somebody like that guy, Penn, he said, this guy looked me right in the eye. He was talking to me and he was being very kind. And I'm telling you, this was a good man. This was a good man. And he knew this guy, you know, he took the little Bible from him, little New Testament. And Keith and I used to carry crosses. We go by crosses and really, you know, $2 ones or something, and keep them in our guitar case. And then, you know, if we met somebody or led someone to the Lord or something like that, you know, we give them a little cross. You know, it's just things that you have in your grasp to do that are part of your community, the people that you run into, the people that you see in passing. And, you know, I'm not really great at everything, that's for sure. I'm not really great at anything, but, you know, I can do some things fairly well. But in my Christian walk, the one thing I've always loved and been good at is just talking to people, and found that something that's really neat. And also know that there's times I've grieved the Lord where he's pointed, oh, you should go, you know, see that person. I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm really in a hurry, God. And, you know, I didn't do it. And I know that, you know, I missed the opportunity, but it's just people are searching and they're hungry and they want a friend. And whether they're going to be your friend or not, they could be like, you know, that guy or that girl, they were really nice. They stopped and talked to me for a minute. And in this world, sometimes that's all we feel like we have. Wait, I don't have time to witness, you know, the last time I really, that I know I witnessed to somebody and led them to the Lord was, gosh, I was still living in Kansas. No, where was I? I was still living in Kansas City, and I'd gone to Dallas to a conference, and my plane home kept getting messed up. I mean, 4 or 5 times, canceled, messed up. That, you know, I was going back and forth. It was kind of crummy weather. It was sort of snowing, and, you know, and I just got so annoyed. After about an hour and a half, I just decided I'm renting a car. I'm driving back to Kansas City. And my friends are like, no, you can't. You know, it's too far and the weather's bad. And I'm like, I'm doing it. So I went down to the lobby, and Enterprise will bring you the car. So I ordered from Enterprise, and I'm sitting there and this girl walks in her uniform, with the car keys, and I'm sitting at the table filling out the papers, and I'm looking at her, and she was she was black, but she was mixed. She was very light, and she had these huge green eyes. I mean, they were huge. And I'm just filling out my papers. I want to get on the road. And I'm looking at her. We're talking a bit. And then I just said, you have the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. And she's like, that's what my husband says. He says I have the most beautiful eyes. I'm like, you do. And then she just all of a sudden, it's like the floodgate opened. And she's just like, yeah, I used to think I was just so ugly that I wouldn't even walk into like a Walmart or a market to shop. I would send someone else. I've just thought I was so ugly. And she was far from ugly. And I was like, what? So all of a sudden we're in this conversation now. I'm like, well, wait, no, you're not ugly. You're beautiful. And she was like, yeah, I'm just this different color in my eyes. And she was very sensitive about the way she looked. And I said, God made you exactly the way you are. I mean, he created you. He made you with this color skin and this color eyes. And you're beautiful. Your husband sees it. He tells you. This leads to this whole conversation. And suddenly I'm telling her all about Jesus. And we're there a long time, because usually you don't have that kind of time, sign the papers and she's gone. And I mean, we talked for over a half hour. And finally, I asked her if she wanted to receive the Lord, and she did. And I started to pray with her. And then I was like, wait, stop. I stopped myself in the middle. I said, wait, I haven't even really shared the gospel with you. You don't know what you're praying for. And so I shared with her, and we prayed, and then my car came. So she came out to the car with me, and I had like books and stuff there that I was loading in the trunk. She was helping me. Now I said, you need to go to church on Sunday. And when you go to church, the pastor is gonna, hopefully, this is America. I don't hear very many altar calls anymore. I'm really bummed about it. Or it's like, if you want to know more about Jesus, when we close, go down there at the front and talk to some random person. And, it's just, I don't know. It annoys me. I'm sorry. I'm old school. It's like, give your message and take an extra 10 minutes and give an altar call. And I used to be able to count on that, and taking people to church. You knew they were going to hear about the gospel. Now in America, not so much. They're going to hear a message on tithing or on raising kids, and they're single, or we've become very teaching, which is good. I like teaching, but take some time out, because maybe someone's there for the first time. But anyway, so when I tell her you need to go to church, and when the pastor gives the altar call, go forward, go forward and say, hey, I'm a new believer, like identify yourself. She goes, I was going to go to church. I've been talking to my husband that we need to go to church on Sunday and take the kids to church. So now I'm worried, what church is she going to? So, so I'm like, oh, okay, well, I found out it was, I was a church, not a cult. So I said, good. Then I went, well, she was like really low hanging fruit. She was just ripe to fall off, and receive the Lord. So I couldn't take too much credit, but most of the time it's just you're planting or you're watering. You don't know. If you do ministry as you go, you just don't know. You don't know, and that's okay. I mean, I don't know how many seeds were planted in my life or in Keith's life before we really ended up getting ourselves to some place where we could really hear the gospel and make a decision. And we went to a lot of places and didn't like them, and went to more places. And then more people told us, well, you should go here, you should go there. And then, so we finally ended up at a place where we finally heard the gospel, and we finally get a chance to raise our hands. And he did, but I didn't. It took me another week. But, we are little Christs. That's what Christians are, little Christs. And we should not hide our lights under buckets. We are cities on a hill. All those scriptures we all know, but we have something that people don't. And in a hard time, I'd rather be going through things with God than without God. And so would most people if they knew, and if they had a chance to know. So I really encourage all of you to take those opportunities while you're filling your car up with gas or whatever it is. Just look around and see. There might be, somebody needs that bag carried, or I'll help them, or I'll help them put their gas in, and maybe I'll have a moment to say something more. Maybe not, or maybe I'll just make a moment to say something more. But to really, really try to really go about God's business, because that's kind of the last thing he said to us. It was like, and I came to a place a long time ago that, well, I'm older, so I've been to like 1 million conferences. I've been to a lot of schools. I've had like 1,000 words over my life. I've had, I'm taught, this teaching, that teaching. But, it doesn't matter how much more I learn about God, how many more words I get or don't get. God's already spoken to me, and I already know him. And there are people that don't. There's just people that don't know him. And, those things are nice. But, many years ago, I got kind of conferenced out, is what I call it. Like, I don't need to go to another conference and, trek around this huge building and fly in and pay a ton of money. But I did do my share of that, and I did gain a lot. But, now I'm like, I miss worshiping with people, I like that. I like fellowshipping with people. But people need the Lord, it's just really simple. And so I kind of beat that one drum, that's my drum. If you want to give me any kind of a drum, that's it. It's like, I don't want to leave the earth knowing that it's not that God can't use somebody else with that person I decided I didn't want to go talk to, but he did tap me on the shoulder. And I do want to try to be obedient to those things. And I'm not the most obedient person in the world. I don't always do it right, but I do try. And so I think, I want to encourage all you that are listening to, just try, get a refreshing thing of, when I first came to the Lord, witnessing was a thing. Like, we went out and did that, we are going to witness on Hollywood Boulevard on Friday night, and we'd all go out. Well, guess what? Before I was saved, I went out on Hollywood Boulevard and witnessed for the Buddhists. I mean, we all are evangelists, whether it's like, oh my gosh, this is the best shampoo, or this is the best tea, or you've had the burger over there. We're always wanting our friends and people to go get that good thing that we found, that we liked. And what's more important than God? And, I blew it a lot with my family, but those are people you see all the time, and there's another layer to that. It's not a hit and miss thing. You're going to be in a relationship and with your family and your good friends. You need a little more finesse. You need a little more process. But, passing through, we're all passing through. You know, we're pilgrims and strangers, and we're passing through, and everybody else is a pilgrim and a stranger. And so the people we meet along the way are important. So I guess I'm feeling like it's probably time for me to stop. I have no idea. I can't see.
Good. You're good, Melody. The message is so good. It's really such a blessing. So don't worry about the time. If you have anything else to share, we would be glad to hear it.
That's probably, let me see.
Mhm.
I shared everything. Well, there's one more thing I could share.
Mhm.
And that is, it's just another story, but it's where God taught me a lot about giving money to strangers. And so a lot of churches in America have like a once a year missions offering. You know, this is our missions offering. And that's good. I mean, not putting that down, but people get so used to putting money in the plate. And then then they trust the pastors to take it to the committee who's going to decide, well, where is this money going to go? You know, and so they decide we've put our money in, and we get used to that. And we go, oh yeah, you know, I give, I tithe to my church, I give. But one of the things that I really enjoy, and that's good. I mean, I'm glad that's happening and not putting that down. But I'm just saying, once a year, really, in a plate, really, you haven't even handed it to anybody. You don't even see the need, you know, it's just, I did it, God, and I'm trusting all these other spiritual people to go divvy this money up and decide who's getting it in town. This was a life-changing experience for me. I'll share this. I was in India. I was in Calcutta, and it's a very difficult place. When I was there, it was in the 90s, and I'm sure it's still somewhat the same, but we had a group from our ministry with us, and we'd leave the hotel, and then when you'd go out, you'd literally be stepping over children that were sleeping in the streets. I mean, to get down the street, we were stepping over children, little children. And, you know, there were people living all on the streets and in the middle of the street in the, you know, park islands. We call them islands, but, you know, the roundabouts for your cars. And the people that were hosting us there said, now don't give money to anyone because women maim their children, and there's like, you know, what do you call it? Like, they're just out kind of working the streets, and they're going to get the money that you're going to give them isn't going to really go to them. They're going to have to give it to the guy that's, you know, sort of has them out there, and it's a racket. So we spent about 3 or 4 days, and it was killing me, you know, not to hand people money, but I want it to be under authority properly. And I remember we were leaving the next morning to fly to Madras, further south. And I was up in my room packing, and I just started crying. You know, I was just sobbing. I was so upset. Like, I don't get this, Lord. Why, you know, it says if they're hungry or they're thirsty, you know, to help them. And here I am, and it's all around me, and I can't do anything. And he said, well, you have food in your suitcase. So I was like, yes, I do. And the guys I was with, some of you know them, was with Wayne and Fred and some of the men in our ministry. And before we left, they were all laughing at me. You know, I would get the, you know, those crackers that are kind of orange, and they have peanut butter in the middle. And so I had boxes of those, and I had like granola, just stuff I could eat because everything wasn't going to be okay to eat where we were. And so the Lord said, well, you have food. Nobody said don't give food. So I made these little packets, 6 or 8 packets, and I was so excited. So when we went out to leave in the morning to get a taxi to go to the airport, I was all ready to hand out this food, and there was nobody there. And it was the first time we'd ever walked out of that hotel where we weren't just like sort of mobbed with kids and women and, hungry people. We got in the taxi, got in the airport, flew to Madras. I cried all the way. I was so upset. I didn't understand. But I do understand that that does happen, that what this ministry was telling us does happen, and that he wanted to avoid that. So when we got to Madras, we were visiting another ministry, and they picked us up and showed us around, and we were going downtown. And every once in a while, the guy driving the car would just stop and he'd get out, and he'd take a little stack of coins, which are probably not worth a lot, but he'd, just give them to that person, or this blind beggar in the street. And then we go further and nothing. Then he'd stop again. We were walking, and he would just randomly give people a little bit. And I'd be like, how are you doing that? How are you doing that? And he said, well, I just go to, I can't feed everybody, but I just go to stop where God says to stop, and give to those that God says to give to. And so we were with them for a while, and then I'm not going to fill all the gaps. I ended up in California, in Santa Cruz. It's a beach city, and in Northern California, just south of San Francisco. And it's a kind of a cool, extremely liberal city. And so if you went downtown, like to go to a movie or go shopping, there were always panhandlers all the time. And living in a spot like that, you get to know the regulars. Oh, this guy's out here every day, or this kid's out here every day. They're probably, and I was getting annoyed. I was like, I can't even go to the movies without 6 people wanting to know if I have change, and I'm like, no, I don't have change, leave me alone. And God sort of corrected me, and he said, I don't want you going downtown anymore without money in your pocket. And I'm like, what? And he goes, you need money in your pocket. When I tell you to give, you give. So I put a bunch of $1 bills in the back of my blue jeans. I started, and so as God would prompt me, I'd stop and give somebody $1. We're not talking about a lot of money. Through the years, he's upgraded that. He's had me empty my wallet, but it was that same principle of, because we're like, well, we don't know what they're going to do with the money. They're going to go buy drugs. They're going to go buy alcohol. They're not going to feed their kid. They're not, they're going to do this bad thing with it. And that's what I used to think. And that's what a lot of people think. But God said, it's Melody. It's really none of your business what they do with the money. You need to listen to me. You need to give when I tell you to give. And that's between you and me. And what they do with it is none of your business. They go buy drugs or buy food or whatever they do, And I was like, okay, that's not on me, But what's on me is when God says, give that person something, I need to give them something. And so that whole aspect of giving, and I try to say, oh, Jesus told me to give this to you. I try to at least put that much in. I usually never stop and witness or try to witness, but I let them know it was the Lord, that Jesus cares about them, and that was the Lord that told me to give that. And so that was a really, really important lesson for me to learn. You know, it was really, and I think we miss that a lot. I think the church misses that. It just, so, you know, we want to be structured and we want to make sure it goes to a good place that's doing a good thing and to good people. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are people that need $5 for dinner. They need, depending where you are, they need $20 for dinner, you know. There are people that have needs, and so if God stops me, I just and says you give to that person, I really try to obey. You know, I really try to do that and not worry about it. I just don't worry about it because it's my obedience he's looking for. It's not theirs. He's not looking for their obedience. But they could have been sitting on that corner praying for a day, for hours and hours. God, please, you know, I need this for this, please. And you just never know how far that dollar or 5 or 10 or 20 or more is going to go and what it's going to do in someone's life. Maybe nothing, maybe a lot. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to close in prayer. Money. Money and people. Yes. Lord, I just thank you for everyone that's on the line and that has popped in, and maybe some that have come and stayed or come and gone. But I ask, and I include myself in this prayer. I'm not out and about that much anymore during this season, but I ask that you'll have all of us to remember to walk with our eyes open, to have our eyes open, and behind those open eyes, to have an open heart, to stop, even if it's just for a minute, even if it's just for 30 seconds, even if it's just to say something kind to somebody, and you don't even get a chance to say anything about Jesus or the Lord. Somebody just needs to know that there are people that are real and that care about them, and help us all be those kind of ambassadors, Lord, to be the kind of people that will stop because you stopped. You let yourself be interrupted. And if you did, we're not better than you. And our meeting, we can walk in 5 minutes late. It's not the end of the world. But it might be somebody else's end of their world. And we might say something or do something that has a lasting and eternal impact on someone. And so, Lord, I just ask that you would help all of us to increase, whether we have a lot to give or a little to give, a can of beans, a bottle of water, an apple, a smile, a prayer. People need prayer. Lord, people on the street need prayer. They're so receptive. And gosh, rich people need prayer too. Although I don't really come in contact with them, but if I did, I'd pray for them if you led me. But everybody has a part in their soul, in their heart, that's looking for meaning, that's looking for love, that's looking for life, that's looking for something beyond what they have. And whether we can be a big part of that or a little part of that, I ask that you would help us to just obey and listen to you and make our hearts available, that we will stop, even if it's just for a minute, 30 seconds. And as we start to do that, Lord, I ask that you put more people in our path to stop for. I just ask that you'd bless everyone here with health, keep everyone healthy, Lord, and bring provision for bills and food and family and the things that we need provision for during this season when so many people are out of work and don't know what's going to happen. Lord, bring the provision, bring the help that's needed for each person, and strengthen us, God, and help us run the course that you have for us. And I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Melody. What a precious word. So practical, so profound. And really, it's the center of how Jesus lived. It's the center how we are supposed to live, no matter the time, no matter the circumstances. So Really, thank you from all of my heart. There were so many comments in the chat where you were sharing, where people said it really spoke to them, it really encouraged them. They were learning so much as you were speaking, and they want to put it to practice. And I want to do that too, even more. So thank you so much for the encouragement. And if you haven't read Melody's book yet, she wrote an amazing book about her life and the life of her husband, Keith. So this is one of the best books that I ever read besides the Bible. It's great encouragement, and really also will challenge you to live the life that Jesus lived and the life of fullness that he has for you. So No Compromise, the life story of Keith Green, written by Melody. You can purchase it through Amazon, or through Amazon probably. That's the easiest way.
That's where I get them.
Yeah.